Jackson trying to escape and run for it, and he's got it and more. Lamar Jackson down the sideline. Will they give it to him? They will. Touchdown, Baltimore.
And with 1:17 left to play on Wild Card Weekend, the Hayes in the barn.
Oh my God! I wish you guys could. I wish we had a camera in here so you could see what we're doing. We're just a bunch of clowns in here.
How much fun is that?
What is up, you guys? It is Jake here. We're bringing you guys a little interview pod here today. Wanted to go ahead and quickly preface it with the fact that it's going to be with Shawn Hubbard, the Ravens team photographer for upwards of 14 years, I believe he said. I reached out to Shawn a couple weeks back, which is around the time we recorded it pre-draft, so we're going to be putting this out post-draft. I'm not exactly sure when, but that's when you guys are going to be listening to this. He was kind enough to hop on with me for about a 45-minute chat on everything that's gone into his photography, his career as a photographer, his work with the Ravens. It's a really, really interesting chat. He's a fun guy. Was really fun to talk with him and kind of get some inside baseball stuff on how he approaches his job. You've definitely seen his work if you are at all within Ravens social media circles. They promote him heavily. His stuff gets pushed out on pretty much all their social media pages, rightfully so, because he's very talented. And this was a really, really fun chat with him. I've been kind of having this one circled on the old bucket list for a while, so I was glad that he responded quickly and hopped on with me and gave me so much time and good info. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to our interview with Shawn Hubbard. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest. It's Mr. Shawn Hubbard. Thanks for joining us, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So rather than me attempting to describe just who it is you are and kind of botching it, how about you quickly describe your career and your work with the Ravens here for the audience?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm a commercial sports and advertising photographer. I've been a team photographer for the Ravens for going on 14 seasons now. It's not a full-time gig with them. All the photography positions are contract work. So I freelance for a variety of other clients for different things. But I've been an official team photographer for most of that time. After a couple of years, kind of figuring out what my role was with the team. Started back in about 2007-ish.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's, really interesting work that you do, and I think this is going to be a fun chat because of it, and a lot of our audience is going to love it because I know you get a ton of love on social media from all of us, myself included. It's really good stuff, but I'm curious as to like your origin story with it a little bit, kind of how exactly you got into photography in the first place, if you could even sum that up briefly.
Yeah, briefly might be challenging. It's a funny story, and sometimes I hate telling it, but So, I did photography in college after a failed attempt to start out in graphic design and didn't really know what it meant to be a professional photographer. I kind of thought, I knew I wasn't going to be like a fine artist. I wasn't going to be selling work like in that regard. So when I graduated, I kind of thought, maybe I'll go work for a photography company and I'll just do that without much more detail than that. And so, my experience in college was, black and white film, more fine art type stuff without a real purpose behind it. I played competitive sports in college, so I did photograph a little bit the team that I was on. But when I got out of college, I just started looking for photography studios, photography jobs, whatever that meant, and I came across this place that was kind of like a school portrait, youth sports kind of place. I didn't know that's what it was when I went to, they had like an open house. It was like looking for photographers, studio work. I went in there with a portfolio and I quickly realized that it was not what I thought it was going to be. It was, and they were basically accepting everybody and no one asked to see my portfolio. So I was a little wounded there, but I was like, I got it. It's like 2 weeks out of school. I'll start here and we'll see where it ends up. And so long story short, I learned how to be a photographer in a professional sense from, doing school portraits, youth league photos. I started shooting action photos. That's how I learned how to become an action photographer. I was photographing middle school kids playing a variety of sports. And so I kind of became sort of a senior personnel there within that company and got experience doing that. And that led to years later, I was shooting a football tournament like the Maryland Youth Football Championships or something like that in M&T Bank Stadium, and just shooting action photos. I've been there all day, and I ran into a guy who I was a acquaintance with from college. He played football. I played rugby. We met once or twice before, and he was there on behalf of the Ravens as their, at the time, youth marketing coordinator. And we got to talking. It was like, we have like a team photographer, but we always look for photographers to cover events like this. If you're interested. And literally at the time, I had not photographed college sports. I was literally photographing kids, maybe some high school. And so I was like, yeah, sure. So I went home. I didn't even really have like a really good sports portfolio. I just kind of put together all my youth sports stuff. And I was like, well, like either they'll get it or they'll just laugh me out of the building. So, I sent them some pictures, and they really liked it. That off season, they hired me for some youth sports camps. Then they brought me in for a training camp. And at the time I was focusing on basically everything but, action on the field. So like the fans, the cheerleaders, all the peripheral stuff, the pageantry, just making it look good and fun. And it just kind of evolved from there.
That's awesome. And I hope you don't take this kind of as an insult, but it's a little bit more of an unconventional profession, right? And so I'm curious, like with it kind of being that creative endeavor, was there a point where you were like, okay, I'm pretty good at this, I'm ready to turn this into a profession, a career, or did it kind of just happen organically there like you described it?
It just happened. I still, don't feel prepared for some of the stuff that I do, but that's what's exciting about it. It's like you get a call for a job and you're like, wow, can I do that? And then you just do it. So yeah, it was very slow progression. Like I said, when I got my foot in the door at the Ravens, I had been shooting youth sports, so I didn't feel ready. Like I was gonna, be ready to photograph the NFL, but I didn't let that stop me. I just sort of like applied what made my photos stand out, even from at that point in my career, focusing on emotion and sort of like the behind the scenes, the documentary type stuff, and I just sort of was myself and applied that to shooting the NFL. And I remember, the first time I walked into the stadium for a game, like I had no idea what to expect. I'd never photographed professional sports before, had my book bag on, like I was like so green. And I was just like, all right, just do you. And that's kind of led me through every step of my career.
Yeah, I can so relate to that because like I've been doing this for pretty much 2 years at this point, I think. And we actually have gotten the chance, the blessing to interview some big names like Ed Reed, for example. And I'm just like you're just flying by the seat of your pants, I feel like a little bit.
Oh, totally. And that's I think that's the best way to do it. Like if you ever feel like you're overly prepared or you got this and it's no piece of cake, that's, then that's when you start making mistakes and, thinking you're hot stuff, and it just doesn't, it's never worked out that well for me. So I've always felt like, I wouldn't back down to any opportunity that came my way and try to prepare the best you can and not overthink it too much. Awesome.
And kind of forgive me if this is a little bit of a deeper cut here, but when did you, like when you took the full-time status or you made it your profession or whatever, did you kind of have any reservations about it becoming less of a creative passion of yours and more of just kind of like a job type thing? Or have you found that to even be the case at all? You still really, really enjoy doing it? You have that passion?
Yeah, so that was definitely the case early on. So I was working for this company and I was working like, 50, 60 hour weeks, and I was doing photography, but I wasn't doing anything creative, essentially. No one there really cared about a creative aspect. It was more like volume, just this is what we do. It's very cookie cutter. And I always had aspirations to be creative and do, I was slowly doing things on my own at the time. And so I at that point, eventually came to a head where I was kind of telling them how they should run their business. And, I like to think of it as it was a mutual decision, but essentially I got fired. And, and that was the opportunity for me to finally invest myself into the creative part of the business and to say okay, I'm not just bogged down by this 50-hour work week. And the last thing I want to do when I get home at the end of the day is pick up a camera and do creative work on my own. So that was the kind of that start of pursuing that creativity. And I've been doing this a long time. So it's there are certainly jobs that you do that, sometimes you pay the bills and maybe I don't have the most creative fulfillment in them. But as far as the work I do for the Ravens, I love every second of it, every year is a new opportunity. Every game is a new opportunity. Every practice. I try to not get complacent because I know there's a line of people around the block that would gladly accept my job, in a heartbeat. So I try to, always push myself and, push creativity and push new ideas and never get complacent. Because, as you may know, the football season and how everything is sort of set up is meant to be very much the same thing week after week after week. So the players get into a rhythm and they know what to expect. And that can be very monotonous from a creative standpoint when you're trying to capture that. Because if you let yourself, you can just create the same pictures every week. Obviously, different things happen on the field, but as far as like the routines that surround that stuff, it's all very much the same. Practice, pregame warm-up. So I'm constantly trying to push myself out of my comfort zone and, trying to get something that I didn't get before, which the longer you do it is more challenge. But that's kind of how I thrive and really enjoy trying to be different.
So you've never had that like traditional office job type thing is what I'm gleaning here. That sounds pretty good setup, honestly.
Never. No. Well, I mean, the company that I worked for, it was definitely like, I was in the office and it was definitely sort of like a more 9 to 5, although it was still pretty much unconventional. I was still working a lot of weekends. But as far as, that's the only time I've had a boss really. Obviously, I've been with the Ravens a long time, so I have people that I answer to there. But it's not full time. It's contract work, and so I have the people there that I report to, and then we talk about things. But I've been able to be my own boss for pretty much my whole career, which has been great.
Self-employed, awesome. So in that same vein, like, what are some of the really specific things, if you could nail down a few, that are like really fun about the profession for you?
To me, it's just putting my spin on something that's sort of unfolding in front of me, and part of what I do is sort of like as a documentarian and recording history, and but I always just try to, for the most part, whenever I can, to inject like my creativity, whether that's into like techniques that I use, composing. I've tried to build a style. I think my work is somewhat recognizable at this point, and it's been awesome that I can sort of like help bring that to the team and sort of have that kind of stand in history. And I don't know if there's any specific things, but I just try to vary what I do to just always be creative. Like I'm never satisfied with just like straightforward, cut and dry. Here we go. I'm always trying to use the access that I have to differentiate my work from what you're going to see on something like Associated Press or Getty or Baltimore Sun. Like I don't take for granted that I have really great access. And it would, do the team a disservice if I shot pictures just like everyone else. So like my goal is to make pictures that aren't accessible by anyone else but me.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And as someone who does podcasting on the side, I think I've mentioned I can relate a little bit to what you do, but I have a tough time explaining it to people at times. Is that kind of a problem that you find yourself having when you're talking to people, kind of explaining what you do, or do you have a simple explanation that you can fall back on this point?
Yeah, it's hard to put into words. I mean, I think people always have like in their head what they think it is to be a photographer. And sometimes that can just be very topical. I take pictures and I never approach it as just taking pictures. I'm trying to create something. So I don't typically have to explain it too much. Like I think, the good thing about working in a visual medium is that people can see it. And they may not always understand what goes into making a picture. But that's sort of like that internal reward that I get, being able to look at my work and know what I had to maybe overcome to get a particular photograph. Obviously, like I want the viewers to be able to appreciate a photograph if they know nothing about it. Like I wanted to tell a story, and but there's little things like that keep me going inside, like sort of the personal moments behind the pictures that I make, that keep me inspired.
Nice. And I guess in that same vein, what do you think like the biggest misconception both about your job and just art or photography as an art form are?
I think maybe that it's just like a glamorous thing, and that like I'm best friends with all the players, and that I know like insider team stuff about the draft or whatever, and it's definitely a lot less glamorous than most people think. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of long hours, and that's I think that's typically people sort of equate being a photographer with a bit more of a glamorous lifestyle, and it's it's not quite that.
Yeah, some people think that like I have inside info sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm just a blogger. Like, I hate to break it to you, but it's kind of tough in that respect when you're kind of like tangentially related to the team. Like the social media people complain about the same thing. I think it's kind of a funny dynamic, but
Totally.
getting into that. Like, if you could kind of paint a picture for us, I'm curious, like, to hear you break down what a typical day looks like for you when you're going to shoot for the Ravens, just like start to finish.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do a lot of. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not there every day. So like basically, as a whole, like in season, I'm photographing practice 1 day a week. I'm photographing a game. Last year was obviously a little bit different, so a lot of things were different than they had been in previous years. But there may be like some community events peppered in there, and then we have things like media day, which are a lot bigger productions and cheerleader photos and stuff like that. But so the game day is probably what like most people see at my work. So I typically, if we have like a 1 o'clock game, I get to the stadium about 4 hours early. I live pretty close, so actually I've been fortunate enough to walk to the stadium, with the exception of last year, because there was no crowds and no traffic, so it was easier for me to drive and not have to worry about getting stuck in traffic to only go a couple blocks home. But I basically there are a few things that say like I have to shoot, and then like they may be on a shot list, but for the most part I kind of get to just do what I do and make my decisions. And like I'll have to go and photograph the players walking in. That's like big for social media with whatever they're wearing and whatnot. So that's like something that I know I have to do, and it's pretty cut and dry. Like it's hard to be creative with something like that. They just need a picture for social media. And then, that's a couple hours before the game. And, sort of like the last player will come in I think they have to be in the locker room like 2 hours before the game. It's usually like Lamar comes in last. And then, after that, there are pregame warm-ups, like individual players will come out. So, I'm just basically what I'm looking for. I mean, like whether it's a home game or an away game, I'm just like analyzing the surroundings that I'm at. I actually prefer shooting away games because it gives me sort of a different canvas, and I'm not seeing the same thing. I'm seeing with more fresh eyes, and it's different lighting and different colors and different shapes. And so like before the players even come out, like I'm like in the tunnel where the players are going to walk out. I walk around the field a couple times. Like I'm looking for spots that I think a player could walk through. Obviously, everything I do is undirected, right? So whatever happens. But I try to do the research ahead of time to see these areas that I would like to feature. And if I think, a player will walk through that, then it's like a waiting game. So like, I try to, the time before the game starts is really where I enjoy the most, because once the game starts, creativity sort of takes a back seat to sort of practicality and just capturing what happens in a split second. And, you're sort of lucky if you can make it creative, but for the most part, you want to make sure it's in focus and you got it in frame and you're not missing anything. So pregame is sort of more of an opportunity to be creative and inject sort of myself into what's going on. So, it's a lot of hit or miss. Like, like I said, like if I find a really cool spot in the stadium where there's like a specific light coming down, like I'll just wait there. And sometimes you wait, 15, 20 minutes. And like when the player walks through that you want to feature, like a security guard walks through or another player walks the opposite way and it's totally ruined. But like I said, like I would rather wait, 15 minutes for a shot that I truly believe in that may not work out than just, spray and pray and shoot whatever without putting much thought into it. So the pregame, when individual guys come out, evolves into when the team warm up happens. And again, just trying to do the same thing when we're away game. I'm trying to, set the tone for where we're at, and trying to like showcase, that we're not at the home stadium and what's unique about where we're at, and trying to feature, put that into photos to give it a sense of place. And like I said, once the game starts, then, it's sort of like all bets are off, whatever happens. After the game, I typically would try to get quarterback handshake, and any other like sort of activity on the field. Obviously, like last year was a lot different with access, and I wasn't even allowed I wasn't even on the field for some of the away games. I wasn't allowed to travel. So that's all different. And then, at the end of the day, I walk home with about 6,000 or so photos. And I sort of call that down into, my favorites. I make the Ravens a web gallery of like my favorite pictures from the game, which normally the number fluctuates between like how good the game was. But let's say it's around like 50 pictures or so, maybe more. They try to encourage me to do more just because it's all about how many page views they can get. But I try not to put a lot of fluff in there. I try to put, sort of just the best images and not a lot of filler in there. And then that's a couple hours after the game. And then I process all sort of the best images. So like 6,000, maybe like say 50 go to the web gallery. And then I deliver probably between 200 and 300 of the final best images within about a day of the game. So that's kind of my game day workflow.
How long does that sifting process take?
It's gotten a lot quicker. It's definitely, I don't know if I could put an exact time on it, but like I can get, say like I take 6,000 photos down to about 1,000, just because like I kind of pick through everything I'd ever want to keep. And that I can probably do definitely less than an hour. You just know what you're looking for when you do it right after the game. If you take a shot of like 25 photos of a play, well, like, okay, like I know the moment's coming, and you kind of go through the ones earlier on before that. And with camera technology now, like the cameras tend to take more and more frames per second, like every year. So it gets more and more photos to sort through, but that's, I think it's a good price to pay for, getting that exact moment that you want.
Yeah, and I think sticking with that theme of it being like both a job but also like a creative passion, do you go into like a game day or whatever it might be with like images in your head of what you're going to want to capture? Because it sounds like you've got that creative side of it going on, but you've also got these bullet points you need to hit for the team. Is it kind of just like a free-flowing process like that?
Yeah, totally. I definitely, sometimes I premeditate on images like very early on in the week. Maybe it's, from seeing inspiration somewhere else. Or sometimes things just pop, like when I'm kind of doing that pre-game survey. A lot of stuff, again, like just happens so like organically, like you go into it with a plan. And like I said, like you can plan for, like if I get there early and I was like, oh, this spot would be really cool, and again, like then like somebody moves something in that area, or just like players aren't going to be there. So you have to be willing to adapt. But yeah, I definitely, I don't know if I like pre-visualize like specific images, but definitely I'm planning, and I have multiple tiers of plans because like I'm trying to give variety too. So like I maybe if I have that spot where I photograph a player, once I feel like I've gotten a really good shot of, I may shoot a couple players, then I got to move on and go to the next thing, and then that may be something that I've preconceived, or maybe something I just noticed from what I was doing. So it changes. Like typically the kinds of requests I get for the team are just to get shots of a certain player. Maybe it's a new player or whatever that they just don't have a lot of images of. It's very rarely like a contrived shot, like we want the back of Lamar's jersey coming through the tunnel, like all the stuff that you see like that is typically, I just kind of think of that stuff, like for example, like, like when Ray Lewis, walked out of the tunnel for the last time, I think it was against Indianapolis the year we won the Super Bowl, like I knew that I didn't want to photograph. I had photographed Ray coming out of the tunnel dozens of times, and everyone's seen that angle. And I knew I had this idea in my head of from inside the tunnel, Ray walking out with the smoke and Ray kind of walking into the next chapter. And like, I pitched this idea. The week before I had shot some test images of some other players, kind of like showing, what I wanted to do. And I pitched it to the Ravens, and they were like, great. Because we knew, like I have, at the time there was another photographer, Phil Hoffman, who's actually been around with the team longer than me. He's been the original photographer there since '96. And now we have also another photographer, Joey Poloni, who covers game day with us. But I knew he was going to get the front angle. And so like having someone else there to get like sort of like a safe shot is always great when you want to maybe take a risk or do something a little more creative so you have your bases covered.
Do you kind of quickly know when you take one whether, okay, I like that one, or that one's probably going on the cutting room floor?
Sometimes, like, it depends on like what stage of the day and the game it is. Like, sometimes I don't even have time to look at the back of the camera. Like, pregame happens really, really fast, and you're taking quick glances to check your exposure and see if it's in focus and check your composition. But you rarely have time to like really analyze the shots. Like this, I don't choose between, like, if I took 30 or 40 images of like a scene, like I don't have time to pick the best image. I do transmit images. Obviously we live in the world of social media, so I have a wireless transmitter that I can send images right from my camera to the Ravens social media team so they can get them up right away. But even then, like, I try my best to pick what I think is the best one, but I hate the fact that I would have to like, spend too much time looking at the back of the camera and miss a moment in front of me. So I'm always trying to be as efficient as I can. So sometimes, like with action shots, you typically like know you got it because, the play happens, you have a little bit of time to look at it. And you're more looking for that one moment. It's pretty easy to see which moment you have versus what you don't. So sometimes, but, I typically just kind of like keep my head down, focus on what's next and try to do the best I can.
Nice. You've touched on this a little bit already, but kind of how would you best summarize the amount of access you get and like how you best try to take advantage of it?
Yeah, I mean, up until last year, I had, I don't want to say all access, but I mean, I pretty much had, comparatively to what I see some other photographers getting throughout the league, I mean, I had great access. I'm in the locker room, pregame, halftime, there's a few times when that's been restricted. It didn't start off that way. I mean, I was with the team for a number of years before I ever was able to go into the locker room. And that actually didn't even really start until like around the Super Bowl run. But yeah, I mean, you just have to treat it with an immense amount of respect and it's all about having trust, right? Like they trust me that I'm going to do right by the team and respect that access and not do anything that would be detrimental to the team. And, so I still try to, I want to make truthful images. I'm not just here to make like marketing fluff that everything is like, perfect. Like I think it's important, to show when players are upset and angry. I think like that's what, people that are interested in the team want to see. Like they want to know that things matter and it's not just a game and they do care. And so I do photograph players when they're angry and having a relationship with players is important leading up to those moments because I think there's trust there that they know that you're not going to try to exploit that and that you still have their best interest in mind, like which I do. But I think to be able to show the wide range of sort of like the lows and the highs of everything is what I love about what I do. And it's not just we're going to make everything look like it's perfect. But yeah, just trying to, you get a sense for, okay, like I need to respect this moment. Maybe I don't take a photo because it's going to attract way too much attention from what's really going on. Right. Typically you find ways, you're around enough, people tend not to notice you anymore. There's certain guys, you can get really close to, and there's certain guys that you can read body language and don't want you around. So you pick up on that, over the years and you just try to use your common sense and intuition to, do what you need to do.
In that sense, what is maybe one word that you would use to describe pursuing this kind of creative endeavor where you need like this deft touch and like sense of space amidst like this really like testosterone fueled kind of like violent environment?
One word. Wow. That's a tough one. I don't know that one word can sort of encapsulate that. I just think, maybe it's just, trust yourself. Kind of going back to what I was saying about like having a vision and sticking to it and not compromising that, for reasons that, are out of your control. And, I don't know. I just try to, if I have an idea or something I believe in, like I'm willing to kind of like push the boundaries of, should I be doing this? Is this okay? Like, is it worth waiting all this time? But and then certain times where you just have to trust your instincts and say like, okay, it's time to move on. But yeah, it would be tough to put one word on that.
That's fine. That's just a little device that I use to get people to kind of answer a question briefly sometimes. Little peek behind my curtain there. But
Right.
in that sense, how, compared to all the stuff you do, your bio mentioned it, you've touched on it, how photogenic is football compared to some of the other stuff that you're photographing?
I think it has the potential. What's tough about football is, you have these athletes and they're covered in all these pads and they have a face mask and so part of that can be challenging just from a technical standpoint of like, I have plenty of photos where, you can't see the player's eyes, during a photo. And that is really important for me to show again, a human connection, the emotion. I think in some ways, it's great because like, it's not like, a sort of like a more tame sport where maybe they're not showing aggression and emotion. Like I love the fact that they're trying their hardest and they're gritting their teeth, and some of that comes out, naturally. So yeah, I mean, I think because of the competitive nature and because of the the dynamic action of what's going on, I think that definitely lends itself to making good pictures for the most part.
Nice. And in that sense, like you get out to the castle for practice, I've noticed. Do you kind of prefer the game day experience, which I'm sure is maybe a little more hectic, or going out there and kind of grabbing some shots of the guys practicing?
I think it's a unique experience for both, because obviously like game day, it's like uniform. This is what they're playing for, but it only allows you a certain, number of opportunities to do what you want to do and be creative, because again, it's like, it's very regimented. And, so there are certain things that you can only get so close, during a game day. Like, whereas practice, it doesn't have the pageantry of the game day experience, but what it does have is the effort that these guys put forth to get there. And I also, again, with my access, like I'm able to be much closer to the guys and get more unique angles of that. They tend to have their helmets off more. When they're like, resting in between activities. So like you can get that emotion more clearly without a helmet on. Guys also tend to, they act a little bit different, practice, game day. Like training camp is like one of my most favorite experiences to shoot, just because it tells such a story of like all the hard work and the grind that it takes to even get to the season, let alone win a single game. And, you're out there in July and it's, 100 degrees and, the sweat's pouring off guys' faces. And it's just, you could just, there's something in the air about training camp that I think is just, has such a narrative built behind it that I just love going out there for a couple of days and photographing the new players. You kind of building, you're capturing the momentum of what this team is trying to build. So that's always really been a great and favorite experience of mine.
Yeah, and I think in kind of a similar conversation, do you kind of prefer the more in action, like candid stuff, or do you kind of prefer the portraits that you do? Because you do a great job with both, but I think you're especially kind of famous for your portraits and like some of the ones you've taken of Lamar that have kind of gone around. Which of those two do you prefer?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of those portraits are candid moments. I don't ever direct guys. Like for the most part, I like to photograph as if I'm not there, like as if these are just moments that are happening that aren't being affected by my presence. So like, there are guys that sort of like, they'll see me and they want to do, they'll pose and do something fun like that. And I'll take a couple snaps, but like for the most part, like that kind of stuff is not going to be in my portfolio. Like the team, like it does really well on social media, but I prefer the moments where it doesn't look like I'm there. Like to me, it brings much more intimacy there. Like it's a real life moment if, the person you're photographing is not aware of the camera. That being said, like there are great moments when, a player will look my way and they won't pose, but they'll look right into the camera. And yeah, like that's, sometimes you can get really special moments like that because, aside from like a media day, which I didn't even get to do last year, that's about the only time of the whole year that I would be able to make a posed portrait, with lighting and I would direct them. In the past we've done where after the draft, we've had all our rookies come in and then I'll do like pose creative portraits of them. But other than that, like I don't direct anyone's actions. So like being able to recreate something that I might do in a portrait session, loosely, is pretty cool sometimes too.
Nice. And kind of shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned traveling and how you kind of like those away destinations. What's been your favorite destination that you've gotten to go to so far, both on like a personal level and a professional one in terms of it being photogenic?
Well, the from a photography perspective, that's easy on the top of my head. All the new stadiums are really great. I haven't been to all of them yet, but the Vikings stadium is that's the best stadium that I've been to, just from a design and lighting standpoint. I mean, like the whole thing is like glass. It's got gorgeous diffused natural light coming in. The colors are bright. The design is not, is not overly complicated. And then like to that, but like, like Green Bay is an awesome place to shoot. Like Lambeau Field is just so historic. And there's, they have a thing there where they don't have advertising in like the seating bowl. So it's all just seats and railings. Like the only writing in the whole thing is like their Ring of Honor, which is way up high. And it's just like, it's very, I mean, the hardest thing of photographing football is having clean backgrounds and not having so much busyness going on in your background. So like, that's the thing you're fighting all the time. So wherever you can go to minimize that, I think is great. I don't know that any place has like more of like a personal, standout for me. I mean, we go to a lot of cool cities, but I'm interested in going. I've been seeing a lot of colleagues that I photographed at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and that looks like it's going to be amazing. I think we go to Oakland this year, or not Oakland, Las Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. So I heard that stadium. That seems pretty cool. I'm excited to shoot there. I haven't been to all the stadiums yet, but I'm slowly checking off all those on my list.
This just popped in my head. Forgive me if it's a stupid question, but does that Cowboys stadium just give you anxiety with some of the technical aspects you just mentioned there? You got the glare coming in when they're playing in the afternoon games, and there's just a lot going on. What do you think of that, the Jerry World?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I remember the first time I walked in there, and it was just like, it's just such a tremendous presence when you're in there and you walk in from the field level. But so, I look at a lot of imagery from other games and other photographers, obviously, and you see those images of like the light pouring through, and like I have yet to get that at like, I think like Indy is another stadium that kind of has that. And I've only been to the Cowboys stadium twice, I think. And, never got that. Like I would want that light because it's so cool and so unique. And now it definitely presents some challenges because, you have a certain spot of the field that's like nuclear with sunlight. And then you have another spot right next to it of shade. So like, I like to shoot on manual so I can control all the camera settings. So like, it does provide some technical aspects, but going back to what I was saying, like, sometimes everything feels like it's the same happening every week. So anytime there's like something dynamic going on that's different, I gladly take any of the technical challenges, to have the ability to mess around with that, because you do this long enough, like the technical side of things tends to fade away, right? Like I can look out of the corner of my eye and I can see a cloud coming in front of the sun, and I automatically will move my camera settings. Like you get that intuition, so like that kind of stuff doesn't dictate what your vision is, and that's really freeing at some point, because then you're really just able to focus on like exactly what you want to do and sort of the creative aspects of it. So yeah, I would love to. Anytime, I go to stadiums that have those unique features, I'm always like praying, like, please let the roof be open or whatever, and like let it be more fun.
What is your favorite football related photo you've taken and favorite non-football related photo you've taken?
This dreaded question. It would be like, I think that photo that I mentioned earlier of Ray walking out of the tunnel, that's up there. But I'm pretty fickle with my photos. Like, a photo that I like, tends to, wear off on me after, a certain amount of time. And like, I'm always trying to do something different. So, like a lot of the ones on my website are ones that I like. I wouldn't be able to name a favorite just because, again, like I really enjoy different aspects about what I do. And there's so many different facets to capturing a football game. Most of the ones I'm drawn to are not the action photos. They're the feature moments, like the more emotional moments. Like I call them on my website, the moments in between. That's what really gets me going. And a personal photo, like I took a photo with my cell phone the day I came home with my second baby. And it's a photo literally like my newborn's on my chest, and I'm like taking the photo like this. You can see him, you can see my 18-month-old at the time, my wife. And it's like such a simple photo, but like it has like, it jettisons me back to that moment. And that's all, like that's the kind of stuff that sticks with me personally.
Another kind of random one off the top of my head. What do you make of like pretty much everyone having like a relatively nice camera in their pocket now with the iPhone? Relatively.
Yeah. I mean, well, not necessarily the iPhone, like definitely like, I don't want to say it's devalued what I do, but it sort of has. There used to be a time when professional photographers were the only ones that had access to professional equipment, and because it costs a lot of money. And now, not necessarily even just from an iPhone, but even like entry level cameras are all amazing, right? So like everyone thinks they're a photographer, which is great. Like and really what it's done is it just pushes me to be better at what I do, because I get approached by young photographers all the time about advice, and they're always asking me like, can you give me generic advice, and how do I make a career out of this? And there's no simple answer to that, but basically like you'll no longer achieve success by taking good photographs. Like so many people out there can take good photographs. So many people can take great photographs. What will bring you success is being different and standing out. Like in a world where everyone's just like scrolling through their feeds, and it's like sports photo after sports photo, and it's like what can make you stop? So, and that's what the good thing is that like no camera can give you that, right? That all comes from like who you are as an artist, and so that's always pushing me to be more innovative with the same equipment that I know other people are using. That being said, I mean, the iPhones are great. Like I photographed a game years ago, a Ravens game, just with my iPhone, the whole game, because it was a game. So basically, up until this past year, I had split away games with our other team photographer, Phil. So he did half, I did half. And it was a year that we played the Giants, and it was a game he was scheduled to cover. And a new phone came out. I got the phone, and I just like asked the Ravens, like, "Hey, can I come?" And I just want to document the whole game with my phone. And they let me. And it's a really cool challenge. Obviously, you don't have the same technical prowess with a phone as you do with a professional camera, so it forces you to see things differently and to be much more mindful of your composition and stuff like that. But it was fun.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It kind of makes you almost stand out more in the way that you know how to frame something and how to kind of get the best out of an image or like whatever it might be. I think that's really well said. Hopefully a little bit more of a fun one for you here. And I think we've kind of danced around this a little bit, but being a photographer, I'm sure you've kind of naturally found yourselves in people's way is maybe not a nice way to put it. You got any like funny stories about like interactions with like players or coaches there? You don't have to get yourself in trouble or anything, but you got any in that respect?
I don't know about funny stories, but I can, without going into too much detail, I can tell you that over the years that Coach Harbaugh is not always a huge fan of me being around in certain moments.
Shocker.
And not that I'm doing anything that I shouldn't be doing, but it's like, before a game, like the tensions are running high, like everyone cares so much, obviously. He's very passionate about what he does, and I'm very passionate about what I do. And there's definitely been some moments when my presence has been requested to leave the said area that we have been in, I won't say a funny way, but a way that I understood what he was getting at the time. So, but yeah, for the most part, obviously Marshall Yanda retired recently, and he was like my arch enemy. He was a great guy, and we had a great relationship. It was, but he, on game days, like he hated, I don't say he hated photography, but he definitely didn't like get his picture taken. He didn't want anyone in his business. And he had some fun ways to let you know that, like, if we were out at the huddle, he would just take the water bottle and just like squirt you with the water bottle to let you know that maybe that wasn't a good time to take his picture. And we laugh about it in between, and sometimes he got really serious, certain moments before a game. But for the most part, it was very playful, but he was the most notable player that definitely doesn't like to be on camera, I would say.
If you don't mind telling the story to me and the audience, how did the whole Madden cover situation come about?
Oh yeah, so I mean that was like one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is so basically, EA Sports produces the Madden football game every year. They typically I think they have like an in-house photographer, or sometimes they hire freelance photographers that have this shoot. They have this concept for the cover, what it's going to look like, and they commission a shoot. And that couldn't happen this year because no one could travel. It was like the peak of like the shutdown. So basically, they knew it was going to be Lamar before, everyone else. And I guess they had started pulling imagery together, and that led them, like they wanted to see what they could do with available imagery, whether it be from wire services or from the team. So they got in contact with the team, and they had already put together like what's called a creative deck of the kind of the concept that they wanted to execute. And they had photos in there, and a lot of photos that they had in there were ones that I've taken. Some they knew that I had taken, some they didn't know, but it was like I was like pleasantly surprised that like I had all the images that essentially they were interested in. So, they went to the Ravens. The Ravens, contacted me. Were like, hey, like this could be a thing. Like they want to see like, the imagery that we have. So I would say arguably I have the best, library of images of Lamar Jackson in the world. So I had like, 2 years worth of imagery that I kind of put together for them, mostly from games, but some from practices and some from like media day. And I sent that to them, and they kind of picked out their favorites, and that's kind of how it all came to be.
Nice. With it being a little bit more of an abstract kind of free-flowing pursuit, I'm curious if you have any goals, like short-term or long-term, that you want to accomplish with photography.
Yeah, I guess just to like, I mean, I'm focused on, the commercial side of my business and doing stuff for advertising. So just working with different brands and organizations. I think that's a goal. Just keep having opportunities to be creative and in different venues and different outlets, different sports, just trying to do that kind of stuff to keep the variety. And I love what I do, with the Ravens. We've gone to a Super Bowl. I've gone to a Super Bowl with them. So like I've lived that out, and that's great. And I hope we get more of those because that was an awesome experience. So I think my goals now are to continue to try to be innovative with what I do for the Ravens, and then to just work with a variety of brands and other sports with the commercial side of my business.
Nice. Well, last one, I got one for you here. We kind of touched on this a little bit already, and like you said, I'm sure people are blowing you up all the time, but what is just one piece of advice you would give to aspiring creatives, not just photographers?
Yeah, I would just say, trust yourself and be different. That is what is going to catch the eyes of people that are hiring creatives. People are looking for innovators and people with great ideas, not already, great visuals, and I try to hold myself to this standard, and I feel like I fail miserably, but, like I see, pictures that I admire are, concepts, and I'm just like, oh, that's like the best idea ever. Even if like the execution of it is maybe just sort of okay, the name of the game now is coming up with the ideas that are going to set the trends, versus like hopping on the back end of a trend that already exists. So just trying to stand out and taking risks. So like maybe that's it. Like take risks. Like specifically with football photographers, I preach that a lot. Like I said, when I go out and I scout my area and like an image that's in my head, if I truly believe in something, I'm gonna stick to it, and I'm gonna pass up other opportunities that may come along with the end goal of seeing this vision through. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you do that, and it's just like kind of sucks, and you may miss out on like a safer shot. But taking those risks and the images that result, sometimes from doing that, I think is what has helped propel me in my career and help my work stand out a little bit compared to maybe if I only just took safe pictures all the time.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks, so much for being so generous with your time. I hope I didn't, butcher half of the stuff we were talking about there as far as your profession goes. I'm a definite neophyte with photography, but I definitely learned a lot here. I think our audience is going to learn a lot. It was a fun chat for me. Before we get you out of here, why don't you go ahead and plug your work, your social media, whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and I appreciate you having me on. This was great. And you did just fine. So don't worry about that. But like for my most recent day-to-day work on Instagram, I'm at Shawn_Hubbard. And that's kind of taking the place of like my blog. And then my website is ShawnHubbardPhoto.com. I try to keep that updated, but that's where you can see a larger body of my work.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. You have yourself a great weekend, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Thanks, Jake. You too.
Bye.
Take care.
Gorlami.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.